Listen, I'll be honest with you. Whenever I first saw the announcement that Karma retired, my reaction wasn't the same as a lot of people, right? My reaction wasn't, wow, what a career. I wonder if he comes back, right? I wonder if Karma makes the comeback. My reaction was, and still is, the same. I think he's done for good, right? I think Seattle Surge Karma is the last Karma that we will ever see again competing. When I saw Karma's tweets directly after the announcement, it just showed me that he's done, right? It just showed me that he doesn't have an interest in coming back. Or if he does, it is not enough interest to the point where we see him come back out of retirement and start playing again. And people have to realize as well, Modern Warfare wasn't the only factor in his decision to retire, right? Modern Warfare was one of the many reasons for why Karma decided to hang it up, right? Karma's retirement wasn't just for anything in specific. It wasn't just Modern Warfare. It wasn't just one Call of Duty title. It wasn't just the Seattle Surge roster. It would be different if it was one aspect or one particular thing that made Karma retire, right? It'd be different if it was one specific area that could be changed or toned up as time went on. And I'll say it again. Seattle was not the destination for someone like Karma. And for those that have watched the show, you know my feelings on Seattle, but it remains the same and it applies constantly and it applies here as well. Listen, Karma's a winner, right? And after being what I've labeled as the closer for that Optic roster for so long, you can't expect a guy for years after playing a certain way to instantly change up and be relied upon as much as he would need it to with this team. Karma's benefit to teams like Optic were kind of based more on his intangibles than his tangibles, right? Karma, ever since he took the role on OG back in Advanced Warfare, he always had the mindset of playing the game fundamentally correct, doing what he needed to help what are fantastic Slayers on his team. It was to get them to the next level, to be that piece that at times could step in when necessary, right? The closer is what I've labeled it as. And the problem with Seattle was that you had too many players that played the same role, right? They had too many players that were of the same kind of mixture, if you will, on rosters that they had been on previously, right? Slacked and Enable. Those guys aren't number one slaying options, and they don't have to be, right? Those are the roles that they play. You could argue that Enable specifically was to that 100 Thieves team that Karma was to Optic, right? Being the closer, being the piece that kept the team together, and being the piece that could step in at moments when they needed them. In 5v5, you have to have your core three, right? 2 to 3 above average consistent Slayers mixed in with some iteration of 2 to 3 other players that can provide something unique in game, are versatile, are leaders, etc. The Seattle problem was the imbalance of lacking the number 2 or even number 3 option. And that frustration of not having the ideal team mixed in with the team's performance, the issues and hard losses that they suffered, the lack of consistency in clutch moments mixed in with the server problems. I mean, that combination of factors would drive anyone crazy if you really think about it enough. Those things all happening kind of in one particular season, it would drive anyone crazy, let alone someone whose career previously has been all about winning. It's been all about dominant winning, by the way. Karma isn't used to losing, right? He is one of the greatest players of all time. He also has been the only player that has been on all 3 dynasties. He's won more world championships than any other player. And to go from that success then to the 3 worst seasons of his career all in a row is difficult, right? World War II doesn't win an event. After coming off of the championship with Optic, doesn't win the event, gets dropped off of Optic ahead of champs, in which they would later go on to finish top 24. He goes through the first time period in which he debates on retiring. Black Ops 4, brought back to Optic. They said, you know what? We made a mistake, Damon. Come on back. He was a part of what was supposed to be the Redeem team. They win the first event to start the season, and that's it. Internal problems start to take over, lack of practice starts to take over, and then along with the Optic and Infinite situation, it's just not all around a great place to be. And here in Modern Warfare has one of the hardest seasons we've seen for any team in the CDL with the Seattle Surge, right? A team full of veterans that was expected to be better and never really showed major upward trends despite having so many different opportunities to do so and despite trying so many in-house roster moves as well. It's been 3 years of thinking for Karma, right? Do I still need to do this? Do I still need this? Do I still have to deal with these players, this team, this fan base, for example, these online issues? At the peak of frustration with the Seattle Surge, he woke up one day and said, you know what? I think I'm done. I think I'm finally tired of dealing with all of this. And he's tired of messing around, right? He was tired of always being labeled the problem with Optic's success for so long. He was tired of Seattle not making any real progress. And that happens to all of us, right? I mean, if you continually have a negative experience with something, anytime you start to think about that thing, you think of what? Negatives first, right? You start to develop this negative connotation towards something, and at times you can develop into having maybe not much as a desire for that thing in particular that you did previously. Now, Karma has spoke on his intentions recently, and the focus is on streaming, right? The focus is on playing other games, growing up that personal brand more. And much like how I said, it was multiple things that made Karma retire. It will also be multiple things that are going to be needed in order for Karma to make a return. Karma, if he's going to return, it's not just going to be with any team, right? He's going to want a roster filled with players he likes and thinks he can win with. Not only that, but he said he has to be blown away by the game. Two things that are sadly going to be very hard to put together. It's going to be a situation that has to match up perfectly, and I don't see that happening. And quickly, let's be clear. For a player of his history, for a player of his caliber, these desires are justified, right? He's put in the greatest of all time conversation, for God's sake. He's earned the right to have these stipulations, as unfortunate as they may be. Now, the only way that I personally see Karma returning to Call of Duty competitive or to Call of Duty esports would be through coaching, or would be at times through working on the analyst desk. Karma has mentioned multiple times before, he wants to keep ties with COD. He wants to keep ties with the game that has pretty much grown him up. And I think he does look at the situation that's going on with TP, right? A guy that he's previously teamed with, the guy who has coached him before, and what he's managed to do with his stream, right? A guy who coached and streamed and now has absolutely blown up, which is fantastic. Love Tyler. Shout out to the guy. Has grinded his way to being one of the most successful streamers on Twitch. I think that Karma looks at that and is inspired, much like a lot of other people are, to say, you know what, maybe I could try out this coaching thing. Maybe I could try out this streaming thing. You know what, maybe I could do both, because that's what TP did. And I think depending on the stream success and the personal growth that Karma has, it will kind of dictate his decision on whether or not we see Karma return as a coach. And one thing to keep in mind as well is with Warzone kind of going to be continued into next year, Call of Duty as well, and with how massive the mode has blown up for these past few months, it has the ability to give players like Karma another focus or another avenue in terms of what could be the future of their career. Listen, could Karma come back right now? Absolutely. Will he? It's going to have to be the perfect situation. And I doubt on that perfect situation happening anytime soon, which I feel like it's going to have to be soon. I think it's going to have to be the next season. I don't see Karma making a return after 2, 3, 4 seasons of COD. I just don't see that being a realistic thing. And when you don't play and you're not in the spotlight all that often, it's going to be difficult because it's going to take away from the eyes that GMs and franchise teams would previously have on you, right? When you're not constantly playing, when you're not constantly, like I said, in that spotlight, it takes away. And in some ways, franchise leagues, it's going to be more about people who are kind of stepping into roles and looking at the talent that exists right now, right? We've seen with the CDL as of recently. It is about amateur talent, and I don't see that ending. I had a recent opportunity to cast some of the Challengers events. There are so many talented young guys who I know could play in the league right now, or at least could be given an opportunity right now and could thrive off of it, right? Mac, Awakening, Vivid, Shotzi, Illy, a lot of these young guys, which I know Shotzi's kind of an anomaly because he comes from a different esport, but nonetheless, a lot of these young guys who have gotten these opportunities, there are others like them. And that's what franchises want. It's only going to become more difficult for a veteran, for example, to make a return. And even with someone like Karma, who is considered one of the greatest of all time, it's not going to be easy, right? My thoughts when I saw the retirement statement is the same thoughts that I have, sadly, right now. That one of the greatest players of all time, I believe, is done competing for good.